Gavin Sheets is not a right fielder, but played one during the 2022 White Sox season. He did his best, but Gavin Sheets was not set up for success. There's no debate over Gavin's power and the flexibility he can provide to a lineup. Sheets is a natural first baseman and perhaps would be best suited in an organization that could use him that way. If Gavin Sheets is in a White Sox uniform in 2023, my hope is that he stays far away from right field.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sox. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. Today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. Hey, I'm your host, Nick Morawski, a lifelong diehard Chicago White Sox fan, recording this podcast just blocks from the ballpark in beautiful Bridgeport. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Really appreciate you letting me steal some of your time to talk off-season White Sox. Locked On White Sox is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Gavin Sheets has serious left-handed power that the White Sox could desperately use. But if the White Sox are serious about getting better defensively, Sheets can't be an option in the outfield. With Sheets being under team control for several more years, could he be packaged up and dealt to a team that could use his first base services? Also, the White Sox are still looking for a manager. Your Chicago White Sox, 81-81 this past season, second place in the AL Central, finished 11 games back of the Guardians. Chicago White Sox managerial search 2022. David Haw from Mully and Haw on 670 The Score had some comments on social media recently. According to David Haw, from 670 The Score, he asked John Heyman of MLB Network about Ozzie Guillen interviewing for the White Sox manager's job. And Heyman said, quote, "I'll believe that when I see it. I'll be shocked if they hire him. It would be an odd hire," end quote. White Sox are no stranger to odd hires, though. World Series, of course, is starting Friday night. So no decision on a new manager before the World Series. Kind of interesting. Take that for what it's worth. October 29th, coming up here, marks the 2-year anniversary of bringing back Tony La Russa. Ricky Renteria was fired on October 12th, and 17 days later, La Russa was hired. Here's Reinsdorf's statement from that October 29th day. Quote, "As everyone in baseball is well aware, I have always respected Tony and am proud to have maintained a great friendship with him over the decades in the game. His hiring is not based on friendship or on what happened years ago, but on the fact that we have the opportunity to have one of the greatest managers in the game's history in our dugout at a time when we believe our team is poised for great accomplishments," end quote. And here is what general manager Rick Hahn had to say on that fateful day, October 29th. Quote, "I can tell you this was made with the intent solely on putting us in the best position to win championships. In the end, Tony was the choice because it's believed that Tony is the best man to take us to help us win championships over the next several years and usher us into what we expect to be a very exciting phase for White Sox baseball," end quote. And if you happen to watch that interview, 2 years ago when Rick Hahn was giving that statement. It looked like this was forced upon him. Boy, it looked like he was being held captive and he had to give a statement just to let people know that he is still safe. This did not at all seem like a Rick Hahn hire. Now, the 2020 World Series, if you go way back, that World Series ended on October 27th. And again, La Russa was hired on the 29th. So perhaps the White Sox waited until the World Series was over to make the announcement, even though La Russa was not involved. Could that be the same strategy once again? Maybe the candidate the White Sox have in mind is not necessarily part of the Phillies or Houston organization. Maybe the White Sox simply just want to wait until after the World Series. After seeing, though, what the Rangers and Marlins did, I personally doubt that. It sure feels like it's going to be Espada or maybe Long. But then again, it was Tony La Russa 2 years ago. A small victory for the White Sox. I don't know if you saw this on Thursday. Lids, the hat and apparel company, put out their lists for top selling gear during the 2022 season. The White Sox were the top team in Illinois and third overall. So we got that going for us. MLB awards season continues. Jose Abreu is a finalist for a Silver Slugger Award. This is per MLB. Given out since 1980, the Silver Slugger recognizes the best offensive players at each position in each league. The winners are voted upon by major league managers and coaches who are unable to vote for players on their own teams. Jose Abreu has won the Silver Slugger Award 3 times, 2014, which was his rookie year, 2018, and then in 2020, that was the MVP year, of course. 2022 MLB Players' Choice Awards. These candidates were selected by their peers. Candidates for Outstanding Pitcher Award, American League. You've got Alek Manoah, Justin Verlander, and Dylan Cease in the running for that award. Of course, Gold Glove finalists have already been announced. There should be no real surprise that the White Sox do not have any representatives, especially right field. That's where Gavin Sheets spent most of his time in 2022. The White Sox were bullish on what Gavin Sheets could provide to the club. I'm going to tell you why he was completely misused in 2022. More on that in a moment. BetOnline.net is your number one source for betting football and the start of the new basketball season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Gavin Sheets. Oh, Gavin Sheets, that curious case of Gavin Sheets. Let's be clear. Gavin Sheets is not a right fielder. He is a first baseman or possibly DH being disguised as a right fielder. White Sox drafted Sheets in the second round of the 2017 draft. He made his debut in 2021, and in 54 games, he only played 13 of those in right field. There is no question that Gavin Sheets has left-handed power and definitely provides value, especially to a team with a home run friendly ballpark or a short porch in right field. The Chicago White Sox have been trying to answer their right fielder conundrum for a long time. It seems like it's been a revolving door since maybe Avi Garcia. The Sox love left-handed right fielders and have tried to check that box over and over again, but the money has not been used to address the real problem. Instead, Sox fans have had to deal with guys like Nomar Mazara or Adam Eaton. Those are the guys forced down our throats. During Rick Hahn's offseason address last November, he talked about right field and Sheets in particular. This is what Hahn had to say. Quote, "We feel very bullish on the futures of Andrew Vaughn and Gavin Sheets. We envision them playing significant roles on multiple White Sox clubs going forward. We will spend some time over the next few months figuring out what is the best fit for them in 2022. Could be DH possibilities, right field possibilities. They're both natural first basemen, and we've seen how quickly Andrew acclimated to left field. They provided us with good options and flexibility." End quote. I could not believe Hahn was trying to pass off Gavin Sheets as a real option in right field. But nothing should surprise me anymore. As we all waited during the offseason for a big free agent signing to occur, for the White Sox to finally address their right field issues, nothing happened. And Rick Hahn's November comments stuck with me. He was telling us how things were going to go this whole time. I just didn't want to believe it. Sure, the White Sox made a deal for A.J. Pollock just days before the season started, but Pollock has spent most of his time in center field and even left. In 54 games in 2021, Gavin Sheets slashed 250, 324, 506. He hit 11 home runs and had 34 RBIs. His ability to hit righty pitching is not in question. He did have trouble making adjustments, but who doesn't at that age? I honestly thought Gavin Sheets would be a guy that was briefly showcased in 2021 and maybe dealt in the offseason. The White Sox were all jammed up with DH, first base, hybrid players. I was hoping the White Sox would have been able to find a team needing a first baseman. There was a rumor before the season started that the Oakland Athletics would be interested in dealing Frankie Montas. White Sox definitely could have used some starting pitching. And the A's, they were in need of a first baseman after dealing Matt Olson to the Braves, but nothing obviously happened there. Gavin Sheets was just not set up for success in 2022. He said all the right things, and I'm sure he worked on his craft in right field, but Sheets was just one of the many reasons the White Sox were so poor defensively this past season. Gavin Sheets has a lot of value and could definitely benefit from getting as much playing time as possible. I'm going to tell you why the White Sox should consider trading Gavin Sheets. More on that in a moment. Gavin Sheets played in 124 games in 2022. He played 85 of those games in right field. The White Sox decided to force Gavin Sheets into a role that he did not have a lot of experience doing, and it was not his natural position, of course. Putting Gavin Sheets in right field felt like a 2017 or 2018 move. Those years, the White Sox were just trying to get by, developing young talent, trading assets, and waiting for their window to open. In 2022, their competitive window was wide open, but the White Sox front office decided to sacrifice defense for the sporadic power Sheets could provide. This has been an ongoing issue with the White Sox for so many years. Instead of spending the money and getting the right player for the position in question, they go the cheap route and try to force things to work. In 2022, Gavin Sheets slashed 241, 295, 411. He hit 15 home runs, and of those 15, several were definitely clutch and extremely important. At one point during this past season, Sheets was sent down to Charlotte to try to get his swing right. That stint seemed to do him well. He came back and had a new approach on how to handle what pitchers were trying to do to him. If he got an away pitch, he took it to left field instead of maybe trying to pull it or do too much. The improvements were refreshing, and he definitely took advantage of the vacant left side of the field during the opposition shift. With the defensive shift being banned next season, I do expect Sheets to be more effective offensively. Sheets is 25 years old and is arbitration eligible at 2025, a free agent in 2028. There is coveted team control, and I still think that he could and should be dealt this offseason to help the White Sox fill one of their many roles. Rick Hahn said that money will not be thrown at problems, and the trade market will most likely be the way for the White Sox. Gavin Sheets has a lot to offer, and you don't want to have regrets, but sometimes it pays to get honest with yourself as an organization, stop overvaluing your talent, and cut bait when necessary. The White Sox must get better defensively, and Gavin Sheets is not the answer in 2023. If Sheets stays, he should be looked at to platoon at DH, maybe first base, and provide lefty power in a way the organization thought Zach Collins would provide. But whatever the Sox do, just keep Gavin Sheets out of right field. Folks, thank you so very much for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On White Sox podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcasts. We're on Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up on the next episode, I'll continue to look at player performances and examine off-season White Sox scenarios. Really appreciate you making time for the Locked On White Sox podcast. I'm Nick Morawski. Until next time, go Sox.